I want you to open your Instagram right now and look at your last 10 posts, because there is a very good chance that at least one of them contains a phrase that the FTC, the FDA, or your state medical board would flag as a compliance violation. And the reason that most clinic owners do not know this is that the line between compelling marketing and a compliance violation in medical aesthetics is a lot thinner than most people realize. The FTC finalized new rules in 2024 targeting misleading health claims and fake social proof. The state attorney general started sending cease and desist letters to Medspas in 2025. And the precedent being set right now means that when enforcement finds your content, it does not matter how good your intentions were. What matters is what the post actually says. In December of 2025, the Connecticut Office of the Attorney General sent cease and desist letters to weight loss clinics across the state for false and misleading marketing of GLP-1 services. The violations included marketing compounded injections as FDA approved when they were not, and claiming clinical trials existed that had never actually been completed. These were not fly-by-night operations. These were clinics with social media presence, active marketing, and patients walking through the door. The content on their pages is what triggered the action. And before that, the FTC took action against Teami LLC. And just so that you know, Teami LLC is a wellness brand. They were having influencers promote health benefits of their products without scientific proof and without disclosing the paid relationship. The settlement required them to return over $900,000 to consumers. If that can happen to a wellness brand, the compliance professionals working in our space are very clear. Med spas are not exempt. Now, here's what I hear most often when I bring this up. Clinic owners say, "That's a big brand problem, not mine. I am a small practice, nobody is coming after me." But what compliance professionals are pointing out right now is that enforcement is not size dependent, it is content dependent. The FTC rules on health claims, testimonials, and influencer disclosure apply to every post on every platform, regardless of how many followers you have. And the cases being reported are not just going after the biggest names, they are going after the clearest violations wherever they find them. Today, I'm walking through 5 specific social media claims that are getting med spa owners flagged in 2026. These are not obscure legal technicalities. They are phrases and practices that show up in med spa content every single day. For each one, I'm going to tell you what the violation looks like, why it is flagged, and what best practice languages look like as the alternative. By the end of this video, you will have everything you need to audit your own content before someone else does it for you. Let me give you a little more context on what happened in Connecticut and why it matters for every med spa owner posting on social media right now. The cease and desist letters sent in December 2025 were not triggered by something that happened inside the clinic. They were triggered by what was on the clinic's public-facing content. Phrases like FDA approved, used for treatments that were compounded, meaning not actually FDA approved. Claims about clinical results attached to treatment that had no documented trial. Language that sounded credible and professional, but could not be substantiated with actual evidence. This is the enforcement pattern that compliance and legal experts are now tracking across the country. The FTC's updated guidance makes clear that every claim on every platform, including Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and your website, needs to be truthful, substantiated, and not misleading to the average consumer. And "I didn't mean it that way" is not a defense. The standard is what a reasonable person reading that post would understand it to mean. The Teami case adds another layer. Their influencers had paid partnerships that were not disclosed. Platform tags like paid partnership were not enough. The FTC requires a manual disclosure in the content itself. That case forced a $900,000 return to consumers. And the FTC's 2024 rule banning fake reviews and undisclosed AI-generated testimonials carries fines up to $51,744 per incident. This is the enforcement landscape your social media content is living in right now. But here's what makes this complicated for most clinic owners. It is not the intent behind the post, it is the claim in the post. And most of the violations being flagged right now were written by people who were genuinely just trying to describe what their treatments do. So here is the compliance gap that most med spa owners do not know exists. When you post on social media about your treatments, your results, and your clients' experiences, you are not just subject to one of those sets of rules, you are subject to 3 separate enforcement layers, each one with its own standards and each capable of taking action independently. The first layer is the FTC. The Federal Trade Commission governs truth in advertising. This means every claim needs to be truthful, substantiated with evidence, and not misleading. They specifically regulate testimonials, before and after content, influencer relationships, and health-related claims. If your post says a treatment does something specific for a patient's health or body, the FTC wants to know you can back that up. The second layer is the FDA. The Food and Drug Administration oversees how medical devices and drugs are marketed. If your post promotes a treatment using a device or medication, including off-label use or compounded formulas, the FDA has standards for what language is and is not allowed. Using FDA approved for anything that is not actually FDA approved is one of the most commonly cited violations compliance professionals are seeing right now. The third layer is your state's medical board. State boards have their own rules about how professional titles can be used in advertising, how procedures can be described, and what claims can be made about clinical outcomes. These rules vary by state, and they can overlap with or add to the federal standards in ways that many clinic owners have never reviewed. Most med spa owners are only thinking about one of these 3 things when they write a post. The cases being reported right now involve all 3. Now you might be thinking, this sounds overwhelming, but here's what I want you to know before we go through the 5 claims. Most of the violations compliance professionals are flagging right now are not complicated. There are specific phrases that sound reasonable but cross the line. And once you know what those are, they're easy to fix. Claim 1. Permanent results. This phrase shows up in med spa content constantly. Achieve permanent results, permanent hair removal, permanent fat reduction. The problem is that in the context of medical aesthetics, very few treatments produce outcomes that are genuinely permanent for every patient. And using that language without the ability to substantiate it for the average patient is exactly what the FTC's truthful advertising standard targets. Best practice language is long-lasting results, or results that vary by individual, with a clear disclaimer that outcomes are not guaranteed. So I'll give you another good example. A lot of clinics say laser hair removal when it should actually be laser hair reduction. As we know, hormones fluctuate and hair grows back, so there's definitely going to need to be touch-ups along the way. Claim 2. FDA approved, applied to anything that is not actually FDA approved. This one is showing up in state enforcement actions right now, including the Connecticut cases from December 2025. Compounded medications are not FDA approved. Off-label uses of a device does not make the device FDA approved for that use. Using FDA approved when it does not apply is not just misleading, it is one of the most specifically cited violations in the cases compliance professionals are currently tracking. Best practice. If the clinic uses an FDA cleared device, say FDA cleared. If it involves a compounded formulation, do not use FDA approval language at all. Claim 3. Before and after photos that use filters, altered lighting, or show atypical results without disclosure. The FTC's 2025 updated guidelines address this directly. Even subtle edits, changing the skin tone, lighting adjustments, or image filters can count as misleading if not disclosed. If that photo represents one patient out of 100 who got an exceptional result, posting it without context misrepresents what a new patient is likely to experience. Best practice. Photos should reflect typical outcomes, and any editing, even lighting, should be disclosed. A simple individual results may vary is not enough on its own if the image itself is misleading. Claim 4. Influencer or partner content without proper FTC disclosure. If anyone posts about your clinic or your treatments and there is a material connection, meaning they receive payment, free services, or any other benefit, that relationship must be disclosed. And platform tags like paid partnership are not sufficient by themselves. The FTC requires a clear manual disclosure in the content, gifted, ad, or sponsored, written out in the post, not buried in the caption. The Teamy LLC case is the precedent here. Their influencers had paid relationships that were not clearly disclosed, and the enforcement action that followed required nearly $1 million in consumer refunds. If you have ambassadors, collaborators, or anyone posting about your clinic in exchange for anything, this applies to every post they make. Claim 5, guaranteed results, or 100% satisfaction guarantee. This language has been specifically flagged in FTC guidance for medical aesthetic advertising. Guarantees of results in healthcare settings are almost always problematic because individual outcomes vary based on factors outside the clinic's control. A Medspa was specifically cited for using guaranteed language in its marketing, was required to revise it and add any compliant disclaimers. Best practice: describe what the treatment is designed to do and frame outcomes around the typical patient experience, not promises. Most patients see or commonly reported outcomes include are examples of how compliance professionals generally recommend framing results. Knowing what to avoid is half of it. The other half is knowing how to actually review what is already out there. Because for most clinic owners, the content that needs attention is not the new stuff. It is the posts that have been up for months or years that nobody has looked at through a compliance lens. Here's a simple content audit you can run on your own social media right now. Pull up your grid, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever your primary platform is. Go back through your last 30 posts and look for 5 things specifically. 1, any use of the word permanent in a relationship to a treatment outcome. 2, any use of FDA approved, and then confirm whether the treatment actually carries FDA approval for that specific use. 3, any before and after photos, and ask yourself honestly whether those images represent what the typical patient experiences and whether any editing or filtering was applied without disclosure. 4, any posts from collaborators, ambassadors, or anyone who receives something from your clinic, and check whether the disclosure language meets FTC standards, not just a platform tag. 5, any language that implies a guaranteed. You will see results, 100% satisfied, or works every time. If you find any of those, do not panic. Most of them are fixable with a caption edit, and add a disclaimer or any updated disclosure. The goal is not to delete your content. The goal is to make sure what is out there can hold up if someone looks at it closely, because in 2026, this is a real possibility. I told you at the start of this video that there is probably at least one post on your page right now that contains a phrase the FTC, FDA, or your state medical board would flag. We just walked through 5 most common ones, and I gave you the audit to find them yourself. And if you went through that list and found one or more than one, you are not alone. These phrases are everywhere in Medspa content right now because nobody sat down and explained exactly where the line was. The clinics that are building compliant content practices today are the ones who will not be scrambling when an enforcement letter shows up tomorrow. Here's the truth about social media compliance for med spas right now. Your caption is a medical claim. Write it like one. Every post you put out about your treatments, your results, your client experiences is public-facing marketing of a medical service. The standard that it is held to is not an influencer standard. It is a healthcare advertising standard. And the gap between those two things is where most med spa content currently lives. If you want help auditing your current content, make sure you get with your marketing team and make sure that they have everything in this video checked off. If you have any compliance questions, we're happy to speak with you. Be sure and book a call with us. The link in the description below. If this one made you think about your content differently, the next video is about exosomes, one of the hottest treatments in regenerative aesthetics right now, and one of the most actively reviewed by the FDA. If you are offering or consider offering exosome treatments, that one is not optional. It's up next.